Highlights for Sunday night on BBC One. At 7:15, Ronnie Barker and David Jason star in Open All Hours.
I think she likes me, the milk woman. Oh, really? What, just casual or enough to give us a discount?
At 7:45, Howard's Way.
As of tomorrow, I'm going into partnership with Jack Rolfe.
That's great.
Oh, yes, great. I mean, what could be better than throwing all our security down the drain?
At 8:35, in Wicker's World, Alan Wicker meets more Britons working in America.
To be fit here, you've got to jog, eat health food, see an analyst, make love regularly and energetically.
At 9:30, in Sickness and in Health, starring Dandy Nichols and Warren Mitchell.
Oh, blimey. I suppose I'll live long enough to see West Ham win that European Cup.
Your grandchildren won't live long enough.
Shut up.
Highlights for Sunday night on BBC One.
Well, to round off Saturday evening here on 1 in 50 Minutes, Michael O'Keefe stars as Danny Stetson, whose mind is stolen by the sinister cult The Homelanders, leaving a split image, our film, at 10:30. First, the news and sport with Jan Leeming and Mark Austin.
The Kremlin expels 25 Britons. The Foreign Secretary says it's totally unjustified. Back in business, the Handsworth trader whose shop was burnt out. Europe go into the lead in the Ryder Cup. And a royal rider races at Goodwood. The Russians have ordered 25 British citizens out of the Soviet Union. The action follows the defection of the KGB chief in London and the expulsion from Britain of 25 Soviet spies. The Foreign Secretary, Sir Geoffrey Howe, said, "We utterly condemn this totally unjustified Soviet action." He thought it would set back relations between the two countries. The Britons being expelled include 18 diplomats, 5 journalists and 2 businessmen. They've been given 3 weeks to get out. Among those going is Tim Sebastian, the Moscow correspondent of BBC Television News. The BBC's Director General said his expulsion was a foolish and retrograde step. From Moscow, a report by Peter Ruff.
Until tonight's main television news bulletin, the general public here had no idea that expulsions had happened at all. The newsreader spoke of unjustifiable accusations being made by Britain and an attempt by London to poison the atmosphere, as they put it. There was no mention of the incident being provoked by a Soviet defector. The British ambassador here, Sir Brian Cartledge, was given the news of the expulsions of British residents by the Foreign Ministry. He called it a vindictive act of retaliation and told his staff involved that they should not feel any blame or stigma. The reaction here generally is one of acute anger and surprise, certainly at the speed of the counteraction, and that the Soviet government should have responded by naming exactly 25, and in almost identical jobs.
The Russians have reacted in a curiously macho way, almost as if they feel their dignity as a superpower is at stake. They could have thrown out a token number of British people, including perhaps 1 or 2 from British intelligence, MI6. They could even have ignored the whole thing, as they did when France threw out 47 Russians 2 years ago. Instead, they've opted to carry on the quarrel by matching expulsion for expulsion. For instance, a Moscow radio man has been thrown out here, so the BBC's Tim Sebastian is being expelled from Moscow. As it happens, he's on holiday in France.
The Russians have simply retaliated, tit for tat. I think it is appalling that we should be the victims of it. But I don't think it's surprising. I think some sort of retaliation was inevitable, but it won't help either journalistic activity or diplomatic activity in Moscow in the future.
And the pattern continues with the other correspondents being expelled. In retaliation for the 3 Russian print journalists we're throwing out, Mark Frankland of The Observer has to leave, and so do Robin Geddy of The Telegraph and Dennis Blewett of The Mail, plus Alan Phillips of Reuters in exchange for a Tasman. But will this be the end of it?
Well, I hope very much it does end here, because the more it goes on, the more difficult it will be to resume normal relations with the Soviet Union, which I'm sure is what Sir Geoffrey Howe wants, whatever Mrs. Thatcher wants.
The SDP leader, Dr. Owen, commented that we shouldn't get ourselves into a lather about the Soviet retaliation. We had to go on talking to Moscow, he said. It's believed the Russians were warned last Thursday that there could be more expulsions if they overreacted, and the Foreign Office has already selected other known KGB men here to throw out if it's decided that's the best way to handle the situation that's arisen. But it'll obviously be a matter now for very careful judgment.
A Handsworth trader opened for business today, even though his shop was burnt out in last Monday's riot. But feelings are still running high among the Asian community. All their representatives on Birmingham's Community Relations Council have resigned in protest at what they see as West Indian domination.
Bitter resentment about the way they feel they've been treated has been festering among Handsworth Asians all week. Chief among the victims of the looting and burning, they complain of lax policing and a failure by Afro-Caribbean leaders roundly to condemn the rioting. But their anger this afternoon focused on Birmingham's Community Relations Council, which they say has been dominated by West Indian leaders for too long. Amid noisy acclaim, nearly a dozen Asian members publicly resigned from the council.
TVI program in Education Department from the Relation Council Ireland.
The Asian Liaison Group called on the Community Relations Council to take a much stronger line on law and order. Back in business today was one trader whose greengrocery was burnt out on Monday. Within a few yards of the wrecked shop, the defiant trader set out a market stall on the pavement and promised customers the service would continue.
Local government workers in Liverpool say they'll blockade next Monday's meeting at the Town Hall when the City Council is due to issue redundancy notices. The unions say that if they prevent the council from meeting, it'll run out of money in a fortnight. Magistrates in Manchester have told a man suffering from AIDS that he must stay in hospital. They ruled that he should be detained in Monsell Isolation Hospital for 3 weeks after Manchester's medical officer said he posed a health risk to others. The man, who's 29, wants to leave the hospital. The main supermarket chains in the Irish Republic have agreed to phase out the sale of South African goods. The move follows talks between the stores and trade unions in an attempt to end a 14-month strike by workers at a supermarket in Dublin.
The strike over the handling of South African produce has been one of the longest ever experienced in the Republic. Supermarkets will gradually reduce the amount of South African fruit they sell, but they've said it'll take time and that it won't amount to a total ban. For the strikers, that commitment nonetheless amounts to victory.
We never thought that we would get every store in Ireland to phase out South African goods, but what we will want to know is how long are they going to take?
It's taken months of negotiation with the supermarkets to reach agreement. Tonight, the Irish government paid tribute to the strikers whose action brought it about.
Their courage and their determination has won the admiration of the entire community, and they have certainly raised this issue to a level of awareness that previously did not exist in the rest of this community.
If everybody involved agrees with the settlement, the strikers could be back at work on Monday.
Police in Norfolk have been making house-to-house inquiries to try to find a 3-year-old girl who's been missing since yesterday. They say Leonie Keating from London was left alone in a caravan in Great Yarmouth where she was staying with her mother. It's apparently the 3rd time she'd gone missing during the holiday. Divers are checking a nearby river.
It was the last night of Leonie Keating's holiday by the seaside. Her mother left her sleeping in their caravan at 10 o'clock last night. When she returned soon after midnight, the little girl was missing. A search of the camp found no trace of her. This afternoon, hundreds of holidaymakers answered an appeal to join 70 police and local coastguards in combing the nearby dunes and beaches. Police say there must remain a possibility that Leonie's been abducted, but she's wandered from the caravan before, and the painstaking search of the area continues.
A 4-year-old Lancashire girl is in a stable condition after a liver transplant. Rebecca Hayworth was operated on today at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge. A liver donor was found after a national appeal by her father. The Ministry of Defence says that Britain has agreed what could be a big contract to supply military aircraft to Saudi Arabia. The contract is thought to involve 48 Tornado fighters and 30 Hawk jet trainers. Its total value is expected to be £3,000 million. At least 5 people have been killed in a train crash on the shores of Lake Geneva in Switzerland. A passenger train crashed head-on into a pair of locomotives on the main Lausanne to Geneva line. 2 Britons were seriously hurt, but they've not been named. It's thought the passenger train went through a stop signal and ended up on a collision course with the 2 locomotives. The train's 2 crew and 3 passengers are known to be dead, but more bodies might still be in the wreckage. It's been Europe's day in the Ryder Cup. With that story and the rest of today's sporting news, here's Mark Austin.